Thousands of people flocked to St. Peter's Basilica until the early hours of Thursday morning to see and pay their respect to the late Pope Francis.
At least 9 people were killed and dozens more injured after a massive Russian missile and drone attack on Kyiv.
Public viewing of Pope Francis resumed at the St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican on Thursday, where thousands of the faithful and mourners joined a long queue to pay their final respects. According to the Vatican, doors were kept open all night due to higher than expected turnout at the line in state for the Pope. By Wednesday afternoon, more than 50,000 people had paid their respects to the late pontiff.
Yeah, so it's pretty early. I got up at 4:30 to be here at 5 a.m. like everybody else in this line to pay my respects to Pope Francis.
We are coming to pay our last respects to him, to see his body, to pray for him, and to be in union with the whole church, universal church.
Pope Francis will be buried in a niche within the St. Mary Major Basilica on Saturday. His death on Monday at the age of 88 capped a 12-year pontificate characterized by concern for the poor and a message of inclusion.
On Wednesday, the body of Pope Francis was transferred to St. Peter's Basilica. Procession carrying his coffin entered the Vatican Basilica through the main entrance, the same route Pope Francis had taken to greet the crowd one last time on Easter Sunday. He will lie in state inside the Basilica for a total of 3 days. Here, mourners can pay their respects ahead of the funeral on Saturday. And even in death, with his decision to simplify funeral rites, Pope Francis broke with tradition. Meanwhile, as preparations for the funeral get underway, thousands of faithful will flock inside the Basilica to see the body of Pope Francis.
Lui ha voluto un funerale più austero, meno monarchico, se possiamo dirlo, no? Non si sarà... Cioè lui ha rinunciato a tante cose per dare l'immagine che il Papa, sì, è il Papa, ma non è un monarca.
I think it's a way to pay respect to a person that has shaped the Catholic Church, but also I would say a significant person in the whole world, right? As a voice in this, very complex world that we are living in, has been a clear voice, advocating for truth and for justice and nearness to all marginate and poor people.
Vederlo per me è dire grazie per quello che è stato e ricordare quello che mi ha chiesto di essere, un missionario tra la gente, per questo.
L'ultimo saluto. Noi siamo venuti a Natale che ha fatto la messa. A me mi emoziona ogni qualvolta che vedo Papa Francesco. C'è una cosa che uno sente dentro, con la sua semplicità, quindi è così.
Hundreds of foreign delegations are expected at the Vatican for Pope Francis's funeral on Saturday as part of Italy's security plan. Police are currently patrolling the streets around St. Peter's Basilica, where the Pope has been moved for 3 days of public mourning. On Saturday, thousands of Catholics as well as religious and political leaders from around the world are expected to attend his funeral. Security mechanisms including anti-drone weapons and a no-fly zone patrolled by fighter jets are currently being used across Rome and in the skies above the Italian capital. Pope Francis has broken tradition by asking not to be buried at the Vatican, but in a simple tomb at the Papal Basilica of St. Mary Major, where he frequently prayed.
Rescue teams in Kyiv cleared rubble and recovered bodies after a massive Russian strike killed at least 9 and wounded more than 70. The attack came as weeks of peace negotiations seemed to be reaching a breaking point, but with no agreement in sight. US President Donald Trump condemned the attack as unnecessary and badly timed, imploring his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to pursue a peace deal.
Це дійсно геноцид проти українського народу, це геноцид проти кожної конкретної української сім'ї. Це те, що винищує націю як морально, так і фізично. І я дуже хочу, щоб такого ніколи, ніде в світі не ставалося. І щоб обіцянки наших партнерів, обіцянки наших прекрасних друзів із-за кордону, щоб вони були не тільки обіцянками, а щоб це дійсно була та підтримка, якої ми варті.
Вот это типа перемирия, которое было на Пасху, это было просто, чтобы накопить силы. И сегодня вы же видели, сколько сегодня летело и сюда, и по Украине.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said he would cut short his official trip to South Africa and return home after the strike. He added that Ukraine had agreed to a US proposed ceasefire 44 days ago, a first step towards peace. But Russian attacks, he said, have not stopped.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has hit back at US President Donald Trump's claims that he's prolonging the war. Earlier, Trump accused Zelensky of hindering peace efforts and prolonging the killing field for refusing to cede territory to Russia. The Ukrainian president has refused the premise of ceding land to the Kremlin as part of any peace initiative. In a post on X, Zelensky linked an old post by former U.S. Secretary of State under Trump's first term, Mike Pompeo, where the then top diplomat slammed Moscow's annexation of Crimea. Zelensky noted that his country will always act in the interest of its people and according to its constitution. He also added that he is sure allies, in particular Washington, will, quote, act in line with Kyiv's strong decisions. Trump says inflammatory comments by Zelensky are making it difficult to settle the war, adding that his Ukrainian counterpart has been more difficult to deal with than Russia.
Are you going to be meeting with President Zelensky?
I think we have a deal with Russia. We have to get a deal with Zelensky, and I hope that Zelensky, I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far it's been harder, but that's okay.
The 47th U.S. president also slammed Zelensky and accused him of overconfidence and arrogance in his approach. Trump said Zelensky has nothing to boast about, warning that if he doesn't strike a deal now, he may lose his whole country in 3 years.
Former South Korean President Moon Jae-in was indicted on bribery charges, accused of accepting illegal favors through a no-show job arranged for his then son-in-law during his term in office. Prosecutors say he received bribes worth hundreds of millions of won from a Thai airline founder. This man allegedly provided wages, housing and other financial support to Moon's former son-in-law between 2018 and 2020. The son-in-law was reportedly hired at the airline in a director-level role despite having no aviation experience and carried out only minor duties. Moon's allies in the Democratic Party denounced the charges as politically motivated, accusing prosecutors of trying to discredit the former Liberal leader ahead of South Korea's upcoming presidential election.
India revoked visas and Pakistan suspended trade as escalation between the two nuclear-armed neighbors grows following the deadly attack in Kashmir on Tuesday. Indian authorities said all visas issued to Pakistani nationals will be revoked with effect from Sunday. This means that all Pakistanis in India must leave the country by then. India also said it would cut the number of diplomatic staff and announced they would suspend its historic water-sharing treaty with Pakistan. Islamabad has responded angrily to the decision. In retaliation, Pakistan closed its airspace to Indian carriers. They also cancelled visas for most Indians. It comes after the deadly attack in a town in the Himalayas in Kashmir on Tuesday. Gunmen had opened fire on a group of domestic tourists, killing at least 26 people. The government claimed the attack had cross-border links to Pakistan. However, Pakistan denied any connection to the attack. People stood still as a 2-minute siren blared to mark Israel's annual Holocaust Remembrance Day. Each year, the commemoration falls on the 27th day in the month of Nisan on the Hebrew calendar. Buses and cars halted on streets and highways, and Israelis stepped out of their vehicles to stand in silence in remembrance of the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Meanwhile, in Dizengoff Square in Tel Aviv, relatives of hostages held pictures of their loved ones while the siren was wailing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other high-ranking officials laid wreaths at Yad Vashem, the National Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. Also, various ceremonies and memorials took place in schools and community centers, and TV and radio stations played Holocaust-themed programs throughout the day.
China has launched 3 more astronauts into space, making a further step forward in the country's ambitions for a crewed mission to the moon and to explore Mars. The Shenzhou 20 spaceship took off successfully around 5 p.m. local time at the Yingquan Satellite Launch Center on Thursday. It is headed for China's Tiangong space station, where astronauts will conduct medical science, maintenance, and install new equipment, says Beijing.